Hey guys, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have the Comic Love book tag. So I was tagged by the creator Christy from Lazy Owl to do this video. I will leave her channel and video linked down below. It does look like she is taking a break from BookTube right now, but I do want to leave all that stuff linked down below in case you guys want to check her out anyway. And it looks like we have about 9 questions here all about comics. So let's get started. The first question here is, what comic book series made you fall in love with comics? I feel like I got into the game quite late. I don't know exactly why. And it could just be that I'm, misremembering, but the ones that I remember really loving, and I think I probably started reading them at least like 6-7 years ago, maybe even more than that. But it is going to be the Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics. I actually started reading these because the show ended. I know the show actually ended like in the early 2000s, but I watched it later than that because I was very, very young when they first came out. I do remember sort of like sneakily watching some of like I think it was season 2 before I really realized what was going on. And let me tell you, for being so young, it was a little bit more terrifying than I really wanted. Like the first episode I think I probably remember watching is the hospital episode. If you've watched Buffy, especially season 2, you know what I'm talking about. That's a creepy, really creepy episode. But I ended up like fully watching the series when I was, I want to say like early 20s. So I then picked these up when these ones were in their bind up form. I don't know how many were out when I first started picking them up, but this one was originally published in 2007, probably as single issues, and I didn't start probably reading these and collecting these until I was like I said, like early 20s after I had watched the show. But I think this is definitely where I started to love the like comic book medium. I basically read most of my comics in comic bind up form. But yeah, this is probably the one. I know technically it was because it was tied into a TV show. These are like the continuation of the Buffy TV show, but I think these are the first comics that I actually remember reading. Question number 2 is the most underappreciated or underhyped comic book. So I have a couple here. One, because I've definitely talked about Hex 11 on my channel before. This is a self-published like indie comic book series, and this is the obviously trade paperback bind up for the first 4 or 5 issues, I want to say it is. And this is by Lisa K. Weber and Kelly Sue Milano. I actually purchased this at a Phoenix Comic-Con, like back when it was actually Comic-Con and not like, I think it's Fan Fusion now. And I absolutely fell in love with the art style first and foremost, because that is sort of what I look for the most when I'm getting comics, graphic novels, that kind of stuff at conventions. The art style, usually from their like presentation where their table is what draws me in. And so I had to pick it up. Absolutely fell in love with this. This is a sci-fi and fantasy series. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but it follows our main character of Eleanor, who is a witch, but she's like not very good at it. Their magic is actually woven into technology, so it's not just a fantasy magic system. It is tied to technology, which is why it's also a sci-fi. It's a little bit weird that way, but there's like demons and everything like that. There's currently 2 bind-ups out, although they are still working on individual issues. I absolutely love this series and I need more in it. But then another one I wanted to talk about is Plume by Kaylin Smith. This I actually bought at the exact same Comic-Con that I purchased Hex 11. That was a very good con for me purchasing graphic novels and comic bind-ups, and this is a fantasy western. Basically our main character is Vesper Grey, who is the brunette here, and she ends up, I think, inheriting a like locket or a necklace where there is like a guardian spirit in it, and it is completely Western, but then we have the fantasy aspects. I really, really love this. This one has 4 volumes and is completely out. And I have been hauling and reading other Kaylin Smith work on my channel that you guys have probably seen pretty recently. But yes, these two I think are definitely underhyped, probably because they're both self-published. Question number 3 is the most loved LGBTQ diverse comic. For that one, I think I'm going to go with Fence by C.S. Picot and Joanna the Mad. This is a very, very cute, quick read. They have 4 volumes out so far. I've read the first 3, and I do have Fence rivals over here that I do need to haul soon. This is definitely LGBTQ. We have, I believe it's either non-binary or gender non-conforming, a character in here named Bobby. He still goes with he, him pronouns. However, they also end up dressing completely feminine, and so we don't know fully on that front. However, there are also gay characters in here, people that have, you know, male-male relationships. I don't know how much else we're going to get in here because it has been a lot of focus on the fencing aspect, which I still really enjoy. But yeah, I love the story, love the art style. I mean, I probably should show that because I definitely should. But yeah, I really enjoy this. I know there's LGBTQ elements, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this series goes next. Question number 4 is the most loved comic book hero sidekick. This is a sort of hard one for me because I don't read the traditional, or what I would consider more of like traditional comics like DC or Marvel. I don't read like superhero comics. So let me see. Okay, so I think I'm gonna go with quite a few of the secondary characters in Saga. This is basically like a big old space opera fantasy where we have 2 main characters who are from different planets on different sides of the war, but they have fallen in love and had a baby, which means they are now on the run from basically both of their worlds. And there's actually quite a lot of secondary characters in here, which I would say could be considered sidekicks, don't necessarily have to be sidekicks, but like the ones that are coming to mind personally are like Lion Cat, which is the Will's sort of sidekick, but then we also have Isabel, who is like a ghost babysitter, and then another one that I don't actually think comes in this volume specifically, but we do also have Gus, who is like a little seal, and he's one of my favorites. So yeah, I want to say probably Saga has quite a few like sidekick type characters that I absolutely love. Question number 5 is the most loved comic book publisher. So besides the independently published comic books that I have, I want to say the ones that are coming to mind the most are probably like Dark Horse and Image. I've also been liking some of the ones that I've gotten recently from Boom as well, but I think Dark Horse and Image are the 2 biggest ones that I end up buying, and I think loving basically all the ones I've ever tried. So again, I'm not that big into, I guess, like the DC and Marvel stuff, but I definitely like those ones. Question number 6 is the most loved screen to print or print to screen adaptation. I love that she included the screen to print option because even though I do have some here that I've read the book because it inspired a movie or a TV show, the ones that I really want to talk about were written after the video game that inspired them. And for me, that's going to be the Mass Effect comics. So I actually have, I think, basically all the comics that they've done for Mass Effect. I am a big ol' sucker for the Mass Effect games. They are one of my absolute favorite franchises, and these comics give a lot of backstory for characters. So one of this series, which is going to include Mass Effect Redemption, this is a special edition cover though. Here is the original one. Mass Effect Evolution, Mass Effect Invasion, and Mass Effect Homeworlds. These give extra like backstories with a lot of the secondary characters. Some of them are from your companions, some of them are the bad guys, but I absolutely love this series. But then we also have the Mass Effect Foundation series. So this is Foundation Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. This series, I'm pretty sure if I'm remembering it correctly, it gives us extra things that happened basically in between Mass Effect 2 and 3, or during the events of 2 and 3. I'm gonna have to reread them. It's been a few years since I have, but instead of giving more backstory on character, it has more events that supposedly happened during those times. And then finally we have Mass Effect Discovery. This is the only comic bind-up for this that I have. I don't think there's any other volumes in the series, but this is sort of a prequel to Mass Effect Andromeda that follows Tyrion Kandros, who is one of the like security guys on the Nexus in Mass Effect Andromeda. So this is sort of like how he got there. So yes, even though I have some comics that inspired, like I said, TVs or movies, I absolutely love Mass Effect, and so I loved the comics as well, and these were taken from the video games, which were the original source material. Question number 7 is the most loved newly published trade paperback comic or graphic novel, and for that one I don't actually think this is the newest published, especially since this is volume 1. However, it is the one that I have read most recently and purchased most recently and absolutely loved. This is Paper Girls Volume 1. I've also read Volume 2, and I have recently purchased 3, 4, and 5 to be shipped to me because they weren't actually at my local Barnes & Noble, but I do also have Volume 6. I have not read those yet because obviously I'm waiting for 3, 4, and 5 to arrive, but this is by Brian K. Vaughan, who is the same author of Saga, which I talked about earlier, and Cliff Chiang. This is a very, very weird sci-fi, time travel-ish type of story that follows 12-year-old paper girls from like 1988. I absolutely love it. I don't have really any answers yet, and I think it's because it's like a time travel sort of book. However, I fell in love with this like right away, and obviously, like I said, I purchased the rest of the series. I'm just waiting for it to come in. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the newest published, but it's my newest acquisition and my newest comic love. Number 8, most loved POC comic book creator or a comic book featuring POC characters. So for this one, I think I'm gonna go with a POC character because I know I don't know that many POC creators off the top of my head, and I don't know if I actually own any, so I will mention a couple that I'm really looking forward to reading. But for the character, I wanted to go with The Wicked and the Divine. There are actually quite a few characters in here that are not white, which I love. This has a very diverse cast of characters. There's also LGBTQ in here as well. So the diversity of this series is one of the things I absolutely love about it. And obviously this is another one where the art style is just freaking amazing. But this series follows a cast of characters that I believe it's every 90 years 12 gods from different pantheons basically come over and take over the bodies of teenagers until they all die, and then 90 years later it happens again. I've only read the first 4 books, I believe, in this series. It is completed now, but there is a lot going on. There's a lot of like conspiracy angles to it as well, but yeah, I've absolutely loved it. I love the characters and the diversity of the cast, and I really need to get back into this. And then, as I mentioned before, some of the ones that I do want to read hopefully soon. One is BB Free by Gabby Rivera. I don't fully know what all of these are about. Most of my recommendations for comics, if I don't find them myself, come from Ashley at Bookish Realm, who I will link down below. She has a video that is like the series she wanted to finish by the end of 2020, and I got a lot of recommendations from that one. And another one that I had heard about recently is Excellence by Brandon Thomas. I'm sure I have other ones in here, but I really don't know where I have them all. I have way too many books on my want to read shelf, and that is a me problem. And then the last question here is, which comic book world would you most want to live in? This is hard. I don't know if I actually would want to live on almost any of them. I just keep coming back to the fact that, like, if I chose any, I could be in a good part of the world, but I could also be in a really, really bad part of the world. You know, because a lot of this stuff has, you know, things that happen that are not necessarily good things, and I don't Oh, I have to pick one, don't I? For that one, I think I'm gonna go with Wayward by Jim Zub, only because in this series, it does follow our main character of Rory, who ends up going to Tokyo, I believe it is, and she and people that she meets sort of discover that they sort of have like powers. This is another series I haven't finished. However, it seems the most like our world here, like a present day on Earth sort of situation. However, some people have powers. There are some monsters, but I feel like this is the closest chance I have to having the same life I have now. And then lastly, it just says to tag some booktubers to do this tag. I don't think I've seen very many people that I watch on BookTube like comics or talk about comics as much. If you do, feel free to do this tag. Like I mentioned before, one person who I definitely get a lot of recommendations for comics and everything like that is going to be Ashley from Bookish Realm. I will leave her link down below because she has great taste in books and definitely reads comics. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you would like to see more videos. I do have videos up Mondays, Thursdays, and sometimes Saturdays, so I will see you then. Bye!